When things hit the fan with my parents, I had to move out. I was down on my luck living situation-wise and could only crash on the couches of my friends for so long. I was looking on all the roommate and apartment apps and websites, and I found something that caught my eye on this app. A man named Owen had listed a room for rent in his 3-bedroom, 1-story house. The rent price was $1,300 a month. He'd basically be my landlord and roommate, as he would also be living in the house. He made sure to note on the ad that he'd be out of the house most of the time and that the renter would have the place to themselves often. He did put in all capital letters a few ground rules though, including no parties, no large gatherings, no drinking in the living room, and no use of the basement. They seemed like pretty standard rules. I went to view the house in person and meet Owen. The second he opened the door, I got a bit of a read on him that he was a little reclusive. His demeanor was quiet and a little awkward. He showed me the house, and I could tell he was nervous because his voice would shake and he would stutter. The bedroom was a good size and the actual floor plan of the house was good. It was an open layout, meaning the kitchen, living room, and dining room were all one big open space. For $1,300 a month in my area, it was a steal. He laid out some more ground rules in person, and he emphasized again how I can't go in the attic or the basement as he used them for storage only. Sounded fair enough. On the spot, I told him I was interested. We shook hands, I left, and 2 days later I was moving in. We didn't draft any sort of lease or contract. I was just going to be paying him off the books month to month, the first day of every month. I had settled in pretty quickly. The bedroom I was renting was already furnished with a bed and basic furniture, so all I did really was hang some of my wall decor and fill the dresser and closet with clothes. The bedroom had a lock on it, thankfully, and he gave me the key to it so I could lock it when he wasn't home, which seemed like a nice gesture at first. Owen never told me what he did for work. He just told me he usually wouldn't be home, but I quickly learned that wasn't true. Anytime I'd come home from work, his car was always in the driveway. Quickly, I started to pick up on loud sounds outside of my bedroom at night, from footsteps to doors opening and closing constantly. One night, I went out in the middle of the night just to go to the bathroom, and I noticed the basement door was opened. I walked over to the top of the stairs and looked down. There was a dim light from down there, seemingly from a far corner out of view. I heard banging sounds coming from down there. It was like 2 a.m. What could he be doing down there? Then the banging stopped and Owen appeared at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at me. It was so creepy that describing it in words doesn't do it justice. He looked visibly annoyed as he looked up at me. I apologized and said I was just going to the bathroom. He almost angrily responded, "Shut the basement door." I listened to him, insanely weirded out. I went to the bathroom and then back to bed. I laid awake for a while after that, now with my mind racing, wondering what he was doing. About a week later, I returned home and noticed my bedroom door was unlocked. I always locked it before leaving every day. I looked around my room to see if anything was missing, and while nothing seemed to be missing, I noticed some things had been moved. For starters, my clothes in the dressers were not neatly stacked anymore. They had been looked through, I could tell. The closet door was also cracked open. It was dawning on me that he had his own key and he likely came into my room and went through my stuff. This felt like a clear invasion of privacy and a violation of my tenant rights. I had to figure out how to confront him about it. I went to knock on his bedroom door, but he didn't answer. His car was in the driveway once again, so he had to be home. I was getting such weird vibes from all this. I gave up and went back to my room after microwaving my dinner. While I was in my room relaxing and watching TV, I heard the door to Owen's room open. I took this opportunity to get up and confront him, so I went out to the living room and caught him in a hurry about to leave the house. I stopped him and asked if he went into my room. He looked at me with a blank expression and straight up said no. I delicately responded without being hostile, saying that the door was unlocked and some of my stuff appeared to have been gone through. He then claimed that I had the only key to my bedroom, and then he said he's in a hurry, he has to go, and he left. I was flabbergasted by all of this. I wanted to ask my parents for advice, but at that time, I hated them and wanted nothing to do with them. I was already back on the apps and websites looking up other listings. I knew I didn't want to stay here. Then I realized this was the first apparent time that Owen wasn't home while I was. Curiosity got the better of me, and I had to check out the basement. I checked out the windows first to make sure his car was gone, and it was. I then went over to open the basement door. Oddly enough, I couldn't find any light switches, so I just used the flashlight on my phone to navigate around. The steps were so creaky I felt like I was in an abandoned house. I got to the bottom, and there was a tan carpet that was curling upwards at the walls as if it were poorly fitted to the floor. It was a very small basement, at least the main room there was. There was just this one ugly couch in the middle of the room. There was also a slightly funky smell down there, and the smell only got worse as I got closer to this door in the corner. I attempted to open the door, but unfortunately, it was locked, or maybe I should say fortunately, because I'm not sure I fully wanted to know what was in there admitting that smell. It almost smelled like raw sewage, but worse. I did one little quick sweep around the main room of the basement and found nothing, just some taped up cardboard boxes, which I was not going to open. I went back upstairs and shut the door. The rest of that night, I stayed in my room. I never heard Owen come back. He must have gotten back after I had fallen asleep. I woke up, the room was still dark. My alarm was not going off, something else had woken me up. I heard the floor next to my bed creak, and I turned and saw Owen leaning over my bed, looking at me. I screamed, and he replied to me to shush and then asked me if I went into the basement. I screamed no. How did you get in here? I locked the door. He then asked me, are you sure? I flipped the cards on him and yelled, did you come into this room when I wasn't home? He replied no, then turned around and walked toward the door. I asked, how did you get in here then? I saw him hold up his hand in the dark. He wasn't holding anything at the time, I didn't know what it meant. He said to me before leaving the room, I think you should find other living arrangements, and then he closed the door. I started packing right then and there. I wasn't staying another minute in that house. I knocked on his door and yelled at him to give me half of the rent money back since I'd only been there like 2 weeks. Moments later, he opened the door, and just his arm stuck out from the door holding a small stack of $100 bills. He managed to make even handing me the money insanely creepy. I grabbed it, it was only $400. Whatever, it was close enough. I just wanted to get out of there. I was fully packed and out of there within an hour. I slept in my car that night. I ended up back at my parents' house the next day, and after explaining the ludicrous events I just went through, something changed where they were more welcoming to have me back. I still moved out a month later, but my parents and I are fine now. If you're choosing to have a random roommate from online, just be careful and use your best judgment after meeting them. Back when I got my first adult job after college, I moved into a smaller house with a roommate. The roommate was a girl that I went to high school with, and her and I were in the same grade. However, we weren't really friends. We both knew of each other but didn't have the same friend groups. I didn't know much about her, but somehow after college, we found ourselves living in the same city. We had been friends on Facebook or something, and because we both lived there and didn't know anybody else, we decided to try to become friends and live together. We were both female, the same age, and figured that it would work out, but I was wrong about that. At first, she seemed cool. I honestly forgot where she worked, but she had pretty normal hours like I did. Our bedrooms were the only two in the house and next to each other in the hallway. We were not best buddies or anything, but we got along good at first. However, she seemed to have sort of strange behavior. I remember noticing her leaving and coming home at all kinds of odd hours all the time. I would wake up to hearing her leaving or coming home. I was a light sleeper, and the times would be anywhere from midnight to 5 a.m. I had no idea where she would be going or why, and this happened at least several times a week. One time I brought it up, asking why she was leaving at 2 a.m. She flat out denied it and said that I must have heard the neighbor. I didn't tell her I knew it was her because I realized that whatever it was, she didn't want me to know. I didn't really think too much of it for the most part, though. But one night, several months into living there, I was out late. I was with some other friends, and I got back home at probably almost midnight. After arriving back at the house, I went inside, and all of the lights were off. I turned on some lights and also noticed that my roommate's door was open and she did not appear to be inside. I called out her name, just wondering if she was home. I figured that she was gone again when she didn't answer. Then I went into my bedroom, changed, and got in bed. I was tired, but after closing my eyes, for some reason, I had a hard time getting to sleep. I laid there for probably 20 minutes trying to rest, but it was like I wasn't tired anymore. Then suddenly I heard this noise inside of my room. I had no idea what it was. I looked up and saw my closet door opening. Then I saw my roommate walking out. It was really dark in there, but I could clearly tell that it was her. This was so strange. I had no idea what she was doing in there. I sat up and asked her what was going on. As soon as I spoke, she looked over and saw me, then she started running and darted out of my room. I stayed where I was and was just so confused. Then, probably a minute later, I heard her leaving the house out the front door. At that point, I decided that I needed to move out of there as soon as possible. For the next couple of days, I packed up my stuff. I don't know where my roommate was during this time, but she was never there when I was. She must have only been back when I was at work. Then I moved out. After that, I haven't spoken to her since. She blocked me on social media, and I still don't know why she was hiding in the closet in my room. She probably didn't expect me to get home when I did. That's why her door was open and she was in my room. She must have had to hide in my closet and waited until she thought I was sleeping to try to leave the room. I'm glad that I couldn't sleep, though, and that I noticed her. That was by far the creepiest roommate experience I've ever had. It was my junior year of college. I had moved off campus into a student apartment building. My roommate was sort of assigned to me by the school in the sense that he was just someone else who needed someone to live with. His name was Arlo, and he seemed like a nice guy at first. He was friendly and polite, always smiling and making small talk. But as the days went by, I started to notice strange things about him, little quirks and odd behaviors that made me feel uneasy. It started with the way Arlo would always linger in my room, asking pushy questions about my personal life and poking around my belongings as if he were way too comfortable doing so. At first, I brushed it off as harmless curiosity, even if I found it kind of weird. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Then there were the sounds I would hear coming from Arlo's room late at night, talking and shuffling noises that were slightly concerning. I tried to ignore them, telling myself it was just Arlo watching TV or talking on the phone, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. One night, unable to sleep because of the strange noises coming from Arlo's room, I decided to investigate. I crept silently down the hallway and pressed my ear against Arlo's door, straining to hear what was going on inside. What I heard was just weird. It was the sound of Arlo whispering to himself, his voice low and muffled. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whispering stopped, and there was nothing but silence. Then I heard, "Kane," Arlo said my name. Did he somehow know I was outside his door? I quickly and quietly tiptoed away from his door and went back to my room. I silently crawled back into my bed. I didn't know what to make of this. Why was Arlo talking to himself? Was he hiding something from me, or was he sleepwalking? But then, how did he know I was outside of his room? I couldn't shake the feeling of uneasiness. The next day, I kept thinking about the night before. As the days went by and the sounds from Arlo's room persisted, my paranoia only grew worse. I couldn't shake the feeling that Arlo was hiding something from me. Arlo's behavior also became stranger. I started to notice little subtle changes in his behavior, like he would make strange glances at me, and his movements seemed a little furtive. One night, I woke up at some off hour in the night and heard Arlo's whispering voice from outside in the hallway, like right outside my door. It was genuinely freaking me out, and I was wondering if he was sleepwalking. I went to the door and put my ear up against it, and like last time, the whispering stopped. Then Arlo once again said, "Kane." This time I replied and said, "Yeah, you good?" He didn't respond. I just heard his footsteps walk away to his room. The following night, I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door closing. I heard Arlo's footsteps walking away in the hallway. This was getting out of hand. The next day, I decided to confront him about his potential sleepwalking. I told him I'd been hearing him walking around late at night and heard him close my door last night. I then asked him if he had ever been known to sleepwalk or have any kind of sleeping disorders. He seemed to not know how to answer at first, but then he said yes, he does tend to sleepwalk sometimes. I wasn't buying it, though. Something was up. I decided to search Arlo's room for answers. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was wrong. I waited until Arlo was out of the apartment, then I crept into his room. I knew that I might not have much time, so I searched quickly, tearing through drawers and closets in search of anything that might explain Arlo's strange nightly behavior. And then, just as I was about to give up, I found it, a small, nondescript drawer hidden at the back of Arlo's closet. I pulled it open, and my blood ran cold at what I found inside. It was a collection of photographs, dozens of them, mostly featuring me asleep and one other guy who looked to be our age. They were taken from different angles and distances, some of them so close up that I could see the pores on my skin and individual strands of hair on my head. I felt sick to my stomach as I realized what I was looking at. Arlo had been secretly taking pictures of me while I slept, without my knowledge or consent. I couldn't believe it. I had been living with some kind of sick voyeur. He had been violating my privacy and invading my personal space for who knows how long. I wanted to confront Arlo, to demand answers, but I was afraid of what he might do, afraid of what he might say, afraid of what might happen if I confronted him alone. So I took a picture of the contents of the drawer and then took a handful of the photos as evidence to use against Arlo. I packed my things, and the next day, I showed the photos to the department in charge of student housing accommodations, and they told me to let them take the appropriate action. I was lucky and got assigned to a different apartment with a normal person who needed a roommate. I never spoke to Arlo again. Even now, years later, I still can't shake the memory of those chilling photographs and Arlo's whispering and creeping around at night. I never found out who the other guy in the photos was. It was definitely his old roommate, but I was never able to find his name. But who knows, maybe he also found out. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.